folks. Thanks for joining in on our webinar of Mastering UI Regression Testing with BrowserStack AI. We can go to the next slide. A few housekeeping items before we get started. Today's session will run for roughly 60 minutes. This session is being recorded and the recording will be made available to all attendees. Participants are muted, but we do have a dedicated Q&A section at the bottom of your Zoom. So you can use that to throw in any questions that you want answered. We will also have a dedicated Q&A section at the end of the webinar, but feel free to ask questions throughout the session. We do have a set of panelists waiting to answer all those questions. So if you have questions during the webinar, you can bring them up. Yeah, a little bit about the agenda of this call. So we'll start off with introductions, and we'll cover what is UI testing and why is it important. Then challenges with traditional visual testing approaches, that we talk a little bit about manual visual testing approaches versus using a full-fledged product. And then we'll move into leveraging AI in UI testing. Then we'll talk about a little bit about how BrowserStack Percy, that's visual testing, BrowserStack's visual testing product, how we leverage AI capabilities and what are some of the cooler, newer AI capabilities we have to speed up your visual testing process. And a little bit more about what we have planned for the future as well, besides what we already have in place at Percy. And then a dedicated Q&A session at the end. So let's start off with introductions. My name is Keegan D'Souza. I'm a senior product manager here at BrowserStack in visual testing. I oversee our products, App Percy and Percy. Those are visual testing products. I have roughly 10 years of experience into product management and software development with a focus on engineering SaaS products. I have with me my co-host, Sai. Sai, can you introduce yourself?
Sure. Thank you so much, Keegan, and thank you everyone for joining in today for the webinar. I'm Sai Shujan, working as a product manager here BrowserStack with close to 2 years right now. I come with an experience of about 7 years, including product management and software development. In BrowserStack, I take care of products like test infrastructure of BrowserStack and also the device features which we equip our devices to provide native capabilities of it. Yeah, that's about it. Keegan. So moving on, I'll take over from here. So first, to start off with the webinar, let's play a small game. I'm sure a lot of you might have played this maybe during your childhood in magazines or something. So on your screen, you can see two images on the left and right. I just want you to take like 30 seconds, 1 minute, and try to take a guess about how many differences are there between the left and right images. We'll have a poll put up and you guys can go ahead and answer the poll. Let's take in 20 more seconds so that everybody answers it. Cool. I think we should be having responses on the poll.
Yeah, can we see the poll results?
Got it. So just at a high level, talking about the poll results, I can see that a lot of you have mentioned around 4 changes to 12 changes or some going around 20 changes. But to break the surprise, the answer is none of the above, because these both images have about 36 changes which have differences between it. The red ones which are marked is what you can see. I know it's very hard to spot it with the naked eye and get 36 correct, but just a simple exercise or a simple fun activity like this will give you an emphasis about what is visual testing and why we need visual testing. So moving on, let me dive into the topic of it. So starting with what is UI testing. So basically UI testing is a technique that can help you detect unintentional visual changes on your websites or mobile applications, etc. So what do I mean by that unintentional changes? It's as simple as ensuring your UI looks the way it should look. Your UI looks the way you wanted it to look. There is no surprises that doesn't get caught by you and it goes to the end user and the end user realizes it. So this is something we want to catch it even before it goes into the production. So there can be multiple issues that occur, like color got changed, or there can be broken layouts. There can be some buttons which have become overlapping with the text and become unclickable for the users as well. So all of these have very severe consequences when it goes into the production as well. And there can be multiple reasons which occur, like there might be a wrong PR which was put forward, or there can be some external components which component libraries which we are using, and we didn't even know that they got updated and impacted multiple web pages of yours, not just a single page. So all of these are something you want to make sure it doesn't impact your brand experience, or it doesn't impact your brand value or the user experience for that matter, and ensure you catch it beforehand. So that being said, let's try to dig deep a bit more and try to understand why, like, what is the big picture here we are looking at? Like, why should you and your team care about so much about visual testing or UI testing in the first place? So this slide summarizes some of the important core aspects of UI testing, and why should you emphasize more on it. So functional testing will only tell you about how a component should actually behave. It is it behaving correctly or not behaving correctly, but it does not tell you about whether it is looking correctly or not, and is there something off with that component. So let's take an example of a small button itself. At a functional level, you might be just clicking the button and checking various different states like enable, disable, etc. But what if the color of the button gets changed? What if the text gets changed? There's no way for you to identify just with functional testing in an easy manner. So all of these is something which brings the emphasis on having UI testing in place. And
So
yeah, okay.
yes, just bringing it up because you were talking about functional testing, right? So a lot of customers that we see move over to visual testing, a formal visual testing practice from functional testing. They try to emulate visual testing to functional testing. So very similar to what you're talking about, how you have a button over there, it's clickable. They try to achieve some level of visual testing on it, pseudo visual testing. So say like writing assertions that say this button should be red, corners should be rounded and blah blah blah, right? All of that. So that's some level of pseudo visual testing that customers try to do. But you can imagine what the functional test cases actually look like. I mean, to assert that a button looks that a particular way, you'll have like 20 assertions at least, right? To simulate it's rounded, it's got this particular text, the font style is this. But the issue there is that at the end of everything, you still wouldn't be able to figure out that it actually looks the way it's supposed to, because it's like someone describing to you in text that, hey, it's supposed to look this way, but you don't know how it will actually be rendered on a browser, right? Maybe there's some browser rendering flake out there that's going to mess up the button. Maybe there's some alignment that is completely, say you got a div with a flex property, and because of that, the button is completely in a different place. So it might end up looking completely different, even with all those assertions out there. You just want to call that out. I don't think you can even emulate that with functional testing.
Yep. Yep. Yeah, thanks for sharing that, Keegan. I'll also touch upon slightly more detail in the next slides. How testing cannot actually cover full aspects of UI testing. And slightly digging deep here as well, trying to understand why UI testing is more important. It also brings in the fact that, like, as Keegan also mentioned, there are multiple browsers which we have in today's fragmented world, and it's not safe to assume that the way a button looks in one particular browser or a device might actually look the same way, because there can be various different rendering issues that might happen. So it also makes it important for you to do visual testing in this context. So to summarize it, functional testing and UI testing complement each other and prevents and adds more of a safety net for you to ensure nothing breaks and does not impact your user experience and brand value, and also in some cases of revenue impact wherein a button is unclickable and it affects your conversion rates as.
Yeah. And brand integrity, what you talk about brand value, that's something that we see larger customers having an issue with. So it's very the impact of, say, your logo, your brand logo, or even like the browser stack logo we've got above us right in our webinar backgrounds. Imagine if that was a little cropped or the aspect ratio was off. Yeah, a functional test would not be able to catch that. But and the impact of branding going off for a larger company, that would be pretty severe. So yeah, brand integrity is something that we see that's really important to customers doing visual testing.
So first approach is about manually doing visual testing. So this might be the bucket of customers or users who are not doing visual testing or just eyeballing to ensure everything looks fine. Maybe comparing the staging environment with the production environment just before pushing the final changes and ensuring everything looks good. Of course, this process itself has a lot of challenges. It's the first being the fact that it's not scalable. With the kind of fast-paced development which we have, multiple web pages which we have to look and all, it's impossible to keep pace with all the changes that keep on happening. And the second is the fact that it cannot be accurate. So just touching upon the previous poll question which we started off with, spotting the difference between two images, we could see that very less people here was able to actually figure out there were 36 or a lot more than 20 differences in the image. So it's very difficult for us to just with our naked eye actually find out the detail level of issues that might occur, so which would require an advanced tool to be in place, and it's very time consuming in like having multiple web pages and ensuring you take screenshots or compare those screenshots, maintaining them as a library is very time consuming and not scalable. So that's the challenges with manual testing.
Yeah, even in the first poll, I think if you had given people maybe half an hour to stare at that image, I don't think a lot of them would have gotten it right. So yeah, it is hard to manually eyeball.
Correct.
Yeah.
So let's move on to the second way people try to achieve UI testing. Some of you might have been trying to use functional testing, which Keegan touched upon initially, by asserting aspects of a component and trying to ensure the UI validation of it happens. But can that actually work or not? It can, but it's close to impossible to ensure you validate every single aspect of the UI element. So, like Keegan was mentioning, for a particular button, there might be 15 to 20 different parameters. What padding does it have? What border? What color? What font is it using? What is the text it is being displayed? Where it is positioned across compared to the relative positions of various different side by side elements. So all of these aspects come into the picture and might cause a impact in UI, which might not be possible. And combined with multiple combinations. So these parameters cross combinations like enable state, disable state, click state, etc. and all. It makes it closely impossible for you to create so many assertions and validate it just by using functional testing. Like for a single button, you might have to write like 50 or 100 or sort of assertions. But even then, you cannot be fully sure that you're covering every single aspect of the visual element at depth.
In yeah, and in fact, it's not just accuracy. I'd say the bigger problem here is the false sense of security maybe functional testing would give you. So just because you've got a functional test written, right, compared to the first approach of manually eyeballing, in a functional test, you'll write a set of 20 assertions saying that this button is supposed to look the way it does. And if it passes, if those assertions are right, if it passes that test, you'll say, hey, this is fine. but you don't actually know the impact of what's happened. You have no clue how the button is going to look because it's just a set of lines describing how the button is supposed to look, but you have no clue how it's going to look. Whereas in the first approach, you at least have a human looking at it. So you can catch it to some extent if something is very severe. You might not be able to catch every single difference with manual testing, but with functional testing, the false sense of security, your functional test pass, you say, hey, everything's okay. And then you go to production and you say, it looks nothing like I thought it would. The impact of that, the false sense of security is even worse.
So coming on to the next two approaches, which are the open source libraries and the traditional visual testing tool. A lot of you already mentioned using open source libraries in the pool, and they might be cost effective in nature, but you can also see that they have a lot of challenges in its own and very limited in terms of capabilities. So in first is the fact that integrating them is a super tedious process. Like a lot of times there is not very detailed documentation is placed and not support that gets provided with this open source libraries, and making it not maintained very actively and making it very difficult to use it. And there are multiple limitations in how you can use that tool. First is the fact that there's no single UI dashboard, clearly maintained UI dashboard with a version history, with collaboration features, etc., for you to actually go ahead and try to review that particular identified issue and all. So basically, it might be the case that open source library can help you for basic use cases, but when it comes to like complex use cases of dynamic elements or various diverse case like layout related aspects, these tools were known to fall short of it. And
Yeah.
yeah, yeah, Deepak.
Yeah, and just to talk a little bit about how Percy addresses these, right? Just the first point, integrating them is difficult. Percy's got multiple integrations. I don't have the number with me. It's over 20 integrations where we can integrate with, say, we can integrate with your Git workflow. We can integrate with your VCS, with your version control system, with your CI pipelines. We can integrate with Slack, uh, multiple integrations out there to fit within your workflow, right? So it just Percy is just a drop-in solution and fits really well rather than an open source solution. Uh, Also, a lot of things that open source solutions don't provide, like you said here, a narrow range of browsers, devices, and resolution. So Percy does provide 6 browsers uh, out of the box. Also, we do have this version of Percy called Percy and Automate, where we give you access to real devices, real world devices, mobiles, desktops, you name it, right? And you so yes, because there are rendering differences across different browsers, each device is going to make sure your website or app or whatever it is going to look different. And Percy handles all of these by providing you with multiple devices and browsers and resolutions as well. Resolutions is extremely important, right? And also on for scaling, for at least talking about scaling over there, right? So Percy's infrastructure does scale, as well as more important than that, Percy does let you maintain a. So one issue with open source libraries is that you need to maintain a history of what your page looked like in the past. So say you know what your page looks like today, but do you know that how it changed over time? You need to maintain version history of how that each screen looks, because you're going to go back and you're going to compare each new implementation of PR to the previous implementation or version of that page. So for that, you got to maintain all those images for your site. So imagine if your site or web app has got like 40,000 states that you want to capture, or if you're doing component testing, if you've got hundreds of components over there, you'll have to maintain all those images and snapshots and store them in a scalable way. And you'll of course have to make sure it integrates into your pipeline in a good way. So, but Percy just makes all of that very easy. Just for example, you can integrate it into your GitHub workflow. So every time you push a PR, you just get a Percy visual test. A Percy visual test will run automatically in the background, and it will give you the results in your GitHub PR itself. Right. So over to you, Sai. Just talking a little bit about how Percy handles these issues.
Yeah. Thank you so much for sharing that, Keegan. So moving on to the aspect of how traditional, now that we have established about open source as well, let's see, there are a lot of other traditional visual testing tools which are in the market and used, but based on the feedback, what we have identified that a lot of them have a very high lead time in setting it up. Versus what Keegan was mentioning about how you can use Percy to set up with an SDK approach in a very fast manner with a very low involvement in place. And let's say even if you manage to set up these traditional tools in place and make them up and running, the major problem they face is about having noise and flakiness. So what happens is it will result in false alarm, and as and when you keep on using this tool with false alarm of the traditional tools, you start to lose the trust of it. Like you have to spend like half a day just to try to figure out what is the actual issue versus what is a false alarm. And slowly you start to lose trust on actually using and relying on that particular tool. So that's where traditional visual testing tools lack, where they even identify like smallest of the issues without maybe like a subtle font change or subtle pixel differences, without actually correlating with what is the intent of that particular screen or the image in place.
Uh, so, sorry.
Yeah.
Uh, yeah. Sure. So I can just talk a little bit about those 2 points you covered, right? So setup is often complex. So in Percy, we've got multiple ways to make your life easy and setup easy, right? So one is integrations, obviously, this works into a workflow, but also the actual implementation of Percy. So we've got multiple ways out there. You can either follow a SDK approach. You can drop one Percy command into your existing functional tests, and that's it. You can call it's just called Percy snapshot. You can put Percy snapshot in any functional test where you want Percy to run a visual test, and that's it. It's one command. Besides that, we've got even easier capabilities. For example, if you're using BrowserStack Automate already, right, you can uh, you can just set one parameter in your BrowserStack YAML file, and that's it. It Percy will automatically be integrated into a functional test. You don't have to change any line of code. It's just that one parameter you change in a YAML file. We call it auto capture on Automate. So yeah, that makes it easy. And also towards the end of the session, we've got a no code way of running visual tests. So for teams out there that are thinking of doing visual testing, but you don't have the development bandwidth, or you just want to get started and you want to cover maybe a couple of pages only, we've got this tool called Visual Scanner or Central Scanner. Visual Scanner, we call it. We have a slide towards the end of this presentation. We can talk more about it there. But that also makes it very easy to get started with Percy without literally without writing a single line of code. Um, yeah, and Sai, you can go ahead. I think we are covering that second point about noise and flakiness in more detail later. So
Yeah, sure. So, just to touch upon at a high level, so now that we have looked at all the challenges, so what is the answer to all of these challenges and how do we go about solving for it? The answer is visual testing combined with AI can actually help you reduce and tackle all of these challenges. So, which will be showing in depth by Keegan. He'll be talking about how various AI agents are implemented. But at a high level, if I have to give you an understanding, AI can help you reduce false positives and false alarms to a large extent by ignoring the subtle differences and also helping you understand what is the intent of it. Like if there are any pages which has dynamic content where there can be elements which like an ad banner or which has a changing related functionality, it can be like an e-commerce web page, etc., which images keep on changing. So AI will automatically understand the intent and help you identify what are the changes that are actually needs to be flagged. And there are also grouping of changes. Let's say a single component of yours might be used across multiple web pages, and it gets updated and shows as an issue across multiple web pages. Instead of you digging into each and every page, it can be grouped across as a single change for you to identify, so that your efficiency can be improved a lot. So in short, basically AI helps in transforming all this cumbersome process of helping you identify issues with a lot of challenges in the current setup tools, and making it more of like an intelligent and stable and more reliable tool for you to identify, which will be talked upon in depth by Keegan by taking you through all the agents which we have.
Well, thanks for that, Sai. You can go to the next slide. Uh, so, like Sai said, I will be taking you to a demo of latest and greatest AI agent. It's called the Visual Review Agent. I'll be explaining all its capabilities in detail. So you can maybe we can skip to the next slide. It's better to show this in a demo than we do it. Let
Yeah,
me
you would
share
want to
my.
share your screen, Keegan?
Yeah, give me a second. Can you see it?
Not yet. Yes, we can.
You can see it, right?
Yes.
So, for those of you who are unfamiliar, this is what a Percy visual review looks like. This is one page of an application, and what you can see on the left-hand side is the base image, the baseline image, the original previous implementation of this page, and what you see here is the head. If you're thinking Git terms, or the newer implementation of this image, what's going to go live to production, right? And you can see that I've got some sort of streaming website over here, right? So it's again, looking at it this way makes it hard to manually eyeball. You saw that in the first poll that we ran. So let me switch on this little overlay mode that Percy has to help you review better. So uh, you would see a bunch of red over here. So let me explain what's happening. So this is think of this as similar to a Git diff view. So it's the red pixels are what's changed in the image. So if you've seen a Git view and you see changes, lines being removed in red and stuff being added in green, it's very similar to what Percy does. Percy highlights each and every pixel that has changed from the previous image, from the baseline image to the new head image, right? So you can see it's highlighted in red everywhere wherever there's a change. So this makes it a lot easier to review. Like you would have seen in the first poll that Sai ran, right? Once we showed you the red view, it's a little easier to understand what's going on. Okay, so let me just turn this off for a second so we can understand what's changed over here. And one thing I'm going to point out, even though this makes it a lot easier to perform my visual review, it's still a lot to look at, a very, very confusing to look at. There's a lot of red over here. It's a little difficult to understand. So I'll show you how Review Agent can help over here. But before that, let's understand what's changed on this website. Right? So if you look over here, you can see that a couple of these shows have changed. These top trending shows, and even the section over here has changed. And this is expected now. This is a streaming website, and trending shows are going to change every single day, right? If you've seen Netflix or any of other streaming platforms out there, it's going to change every day. It could be it's heavily dependent on user preference and the algorithm. And yeah, that's it. It's so we call that dynamic data. It's dynamic data or a change caused by dynamic data. That's a change that is not fueled by a pull request, or it's not fueled by a code change. It's happened because of the state of the system or because of different users viewing it, right? So these trending shows would change day on day. They could change based on my preferences, what the site decides to recommend to me, but it does not represent something that was fueled by a code change, and it's not something that could be a regression bug, or it's not something that's fueled by a code change. So it's not something a human should spend time reviewing, because it's the state of the system. Every test is going to have this change. You do not want to be spending time here reviewing this every single time in every single visual test, right? You want your test to go a little bit faster. So ideally these shows are not changes you would want to spend time reviewing. So let me switch this view off. Oh, you can also see, sorry, before I move to that, you can also see that this language selection dropdown, that has actually gone away from the page. If I turn on the red diff view just to make it a little more clear, you can see that, yes, that language dropdown has disappeared from the page. So that could potentially be a regression bug or something that's fueled by a code change. So that is something that you would want to test in a visual test. Now, let me turn on Review Agent to show how what I've shown you right now is just regular Percy without AI. Now, let me switch on our new Review Agent to show you what this is going to look like. So you would have noticed instantly, I'll do it a little more slowly, one more time. You would have noticed that a bunch of red has just gone away. So what's happened over here is Review Agent has actually gone in and intelligently understood that, hey, all of this is dynamic data. It's not something like does not represent a human. a regression bug, and hence you should not spend time reviewing it. And I'm going to switch on this view over here. This will actually show me what review agent is filtered out in a different color, just to make things simpler. So once, if I click over here, and this is another great feature of review agent, you can see it's actually given me the reason why it feels that this should not be reviewed. It's a lot of text here, but if I just highlight this section, you'll notice that what it said is it's dynamic content. It's based on the state of the system or new additions, or it's based on my particular preference. It's not something that should be reviewed in a visual test. So that's why it's gone and intelligently find out this is dynamic data and it's filtered that out, right? And you can see it's done the same to these little carousel indicators over here. So you can see that it's actually told me that this is a carousel indicator. Carousel is going to move every couple of seconds. The images are going to change. So it's actually not flagged this as a change. It's hidden it because it feels that this is dynamic data. It's not something that a human should spend time reviewing. The only reason you can see it is because I've turned on this little view ignore changes feature. But if you want a clearer view, if you just want a faster review, you can just switch that off and focus on what's in red, right? So that's the main impact or ROI of review agent. We help you review faster by filtering out all these irrelevant changes. We've actually sped up your entire review time. If you see on my left-hand side over here, it's actually said how much review agent has, how many diffs it's gone in and figured out are irrelevant to me, and it's hidden that from my view. Because of it's hidden 29 visual differences across all the pages, screens, it's saved me 14 minutes of review time. So 14 minutes of review time with Percy that it saved over on top of that. Another great feature of Review Agent, it helps you understand what's changed a little bit easier. So let me switch this view off. So say, like I said, it's a bunch of red pixels. I need to actually go in and try to understand, hey, what has changed over here? But Review Agent makes that much faster by giving you a description of what has changed in plain English. So it's actually said over here that, hey, the language preferences drop down and it's removed entirely from the web page. So it's helped me understand it instantly. So although the red pixels do make it much easier than just manually eyeballing, it's the description has made it so that I understand what's changed in just 2 to 3 seconds. That's it. So it's made it much easier. So two benefits of review agents, right? It helps you reduce the number of visual differences and speed up your review time. The second benefit is it gives you change descriptions, which helps you review faster. Yeah. Cool. Sai, I think we're done with this. We can go back to the slide deck.
Sure.
Yeah.
You want to go ahead, Keegan?
Yeah, I can do it. Yeah. So okay, we've done the review agent. So our next feature we do want to talk about is IntelliIgnore. So IntelliIgnore is a very interesting feature, like similar to how we showed you review agent, right? Say you've got an image on your site, and say your team wants to do a little bit of A/B testing because it wants to check different variants of the image. Say it's in the next slide we'll have an example. We'll get to that. But say it's a person with a hat, and say that person has a yellow hat in one image and it's got a red hat in another image. Very common A/B testing use case, right? You want to see which image works. Now in over there, again, it's very similar to what review agent did. It's dependent on data and nature of the system. It's not something that's fueled by a code change. It's not something someone should spend time reviewing because it's good. It's just a test that you're running over there. That's one very simple example. A/B testing is one example. Uh, Ads are another example. Say you've got ad images, ads are going to change constantly, right? So you don't want that creating a false positive or causing noise in your visual test every single time you do a review, because that's going to change and you don't want someone spending time on that repeatedly. So that's why we built IntelliIgnore. IntelliIgnore is specifically meant to handle cases like this, where we leverage AI to analyze images and only flag regressions that a human would actually notice. So the idea with all the changes you would have noticed that with review agent, you would notice that with IntelliGo is that we are always trying to just make you review much faster than you can by yourself. right? Even on top of how Percy already speeds things up over manual eyeballing, we're also trying to leverage AI to speed things up. So yeah, one aspect where IntelliGno also helps is that browsers do have rendering differences across them, right? So, for example, Safari might compress images to make them seem a little load a bit faster based on your internet. So, on different page loads, you might find slight differences, very minor differences in those images. Even though it's the exact same image, you might find, say, a few more lines added here, a few more pixels added here just because Safari has tried to optimize that image, right? So IntelliIgnore helps you figure out changes, ignore changes like that. We've got a diff sensitivity slider. You can track that. You can make it find a sweet spot for you. Basically, just filter out, make me look at changes that actually matter to me. Make me spend time over there. That's what IntelliIgnore and Review Agent do. Sai, you can go to the next slide to show everyone what we're talking about. So this is what IntelliIgnore looks like, right? If you see on the left-hand side, we've got an image of an astronaut over there. And on the right-hand side, if you see, Sai, maybe you can move your cursor to the small little dots on the left-hand side, a little higher.
Yeah.
On the right-hand side, green image. Yeah, that one. Yeah. You would notice that those small two triangles have been removed from the left side image and the right side image. So that's the kind of minor change. Maybe your design team felt that, hey, users will respond a little bit better to this one on the right hand side. So maybe we should remove those changes, change that image slightly. But it's not something someone should spend time looking at, right? So that's why we've highlighted in the rightmost image that Intel we ignore can actually filter out these changes, and it's filtered out these minor changes, and you can see below it's actually flagged. It's actually the ones in red at the bottom have actually been flagged because they are pretty major changes. So again, you can control IntelliIgnore settings, but this is one setting where I've asked it to flag changes which are very severe. So like the left hand side image where it's in a landscape mode and the right side image where it's in a portrait mode. It's a pretty major change. I would want to review this. This could potentially be a bug. Maybe I put a wrong image link over here and push my PR. So that's why I want to review this. IntelliIgnore is flagged that. So it gives you that control. We give you that flexibility. You can choose what level of changes you want to filter out and what you want to focus on. Yeah, coming to our third AI, one of our AI capabilities, this is layout testing. So layout testing, imagine a case that say you've got an e-commerce website. That's a very common example. Um, the layout and structure of your website is going to be the same for most of the time. That you're going to have a top nav, you will have maybe a bunch of categories on the left hand side. You will have a bunch of product cards and categories and stuff like that. You will have a top header banner showcasing some great product. And that structure is not going to change very often. What's going to change is the content of those. So whenever I have a seasonal sale or maybe trending products change, like we saw in Review Engine over there, right? The content of all of those cards might change. The categories I'm showing you might change. Uh, Carousel images might change, but the layout of my web page has stayed the same, right? So when I'm visual testing, I only want to focus on looking at the visual, at the layout changes, if one card has moved from here and it's suddenly on my left navigation, that is something I want to figure out. But if my my top products today have changed, I don't want to look at that. If the price of my products have changed, I don't want to look at that. If I've renamed electronics to technology, that's not something I want to look at because my team might be playing around with that all the time. So I only want to look at the changes in the if major elements are moving, or what we call layout testing. Layout testing actually checks the relative position of elements on the web page and the size of those elements. So you can actually tell Percy that, hey, I want to layout test this page. Ignore all aesthetic changes like maybe color, font changes, text, pricing, images. Only focus on layout changes, how the major components are moving. So that's what layout testing does. It lets you focus on only the layout of the structure of your page and not on the aesthetic changes. We can see an example in the next slide. Right. If you see, this is a login page. It's a login page for BrowserStack. You would notice that, you would notice the text on that button has changed from sign in to login. Your eyes are very good. You will see on the left hand side, it's original image where it says sign in. On the right hand side, it says login. uh, that's that's something maybe I'm playing around with. So over here, I've said layout testing is true. So you can see it's only showed me that the button position has changed. The changes highlighted in red are the changes that Percy has highlighted. For me, it's ignored the text on the button change because I asked it to, and it's showed me only that. And even lower down, you can see the icons have been stacked instead of put in one single line. So it's actually called out that, hey, only this is a change. And yeah, that's it. So layout, and even on top, you would notice your 7 day free trial is changed to 14-day trial is changed to free 7 day trial. So those are the sort of changes you can ask layout testing to ignore, and you can only focus on what matters here, which is just the layout of the application. So you can see it's given me a very focused view. Otherwise, if I had not said this is layout testing, if Percy didn't have the capability, everything would have been red here. Every text change, everything would have been red. Even there's a time at the top left corner, which is for my device. So that is not something I would want to see, right? Yep. So that's layout testing. Yeah, so you've seen a couple of the features that we already have. You've seen Review Agent, you've seen IntelliIgnore and layout testing. Those are the AI capabilities we already have. We also have a couple of more, but those were the highlights I wanted to call out. We are also looking into how do we leverage, how do we go forward from here. We've we've looked at, we focused on improving productivity, increasing review time, right? But where do we go from here? How can we push that even further, right? So we're looking at how and so when we're talking about AI over here, we're talking about the newer Gen AI, LLMs, not traditional machine learning technologies. We're thinking about how this can improve Percy's current visual AI engine. Percy's current visual AI engine leverages ML technologies, not Gen AI technologies. So we are looking at how we can improve on that. Can we leverage Gen AI here? Um, Also, of course, we're always helping you to review faster. So that's our core focus over there. Distinguish between visual changes, dynamic infra related versus code changes. That is something we are already we have to some extent in review agent, but we want to take it further. We want to take it further and say, how do we intelligently look at, look at your code, and how do we figure out from that what has changed? Can we infer from just your code? Maybe your pull request is a minor change over there. Can we look at that and tell you exactly what is a regression bug and what is not, what you should ignore? So that's one area we're looking into. Automatically make workflow decisions. So on Percy, part of the review process is that when you see a visual difference, you either give it a thumbs up or thumbs down. You either disapprove it or you approve it. You say this is either a bug or this is something that is fine and can go to production. It's an intended change. So we are looking at how AI can automatically make those decisions for you based on past interactions and say how you've reviewed in the past. Uh, the next point is, again, how do we cover more dynamic elements like say videos, SVG? Those are things that are always there, changing. So review agent does help you automatically out of the box ignore those changes. But say what if there are some changes like say lazy loading, which is going to cause a significant amount of changes? How do we automatically suggest code changes to you so that you can stabilize the image? We call it stabilization. That's to freeze. In short, it's freezing your page or screen or application so that it's ready for a visual test, right? Uh, yeah, the last point is like, how do we figure out visual testing sensitivity levels? So we in Percy, we've got testing sensitivity levels where we allow you to configure an amount of how strict your visual tests are. Say, do you want to, like we said, we allow you to achieve pixel perfect design, but do you want less than that? Maybe you're saying that, hey, 1 or 2 pixels here and there, fine. So can we recommend that to you based on your past test history and what are your interactions with the system? Again, just making everything smoother so that there's minimal effort required from a user. Right? Yeah. Oh, yes. So at the start, we did talk about how we wanted to have how Percy has multiple setup options, right? So we talked about how Percy is very easy to set up. You can set up quickly. One of the options we talked about is a low code, sorry, not low code, no code. Yes, thanks for correcting me. A no code way of visual testing. So great for teams who just want to dip their toes into visual testing, as well as maybe you just don't have the developer bandwidth. You want to do visual testing, but you don't have the bandwidth at this time to the QA or developer bandwidth to for visual testing, right? So Visual Scanner at a very simply just you can just paste in a URL or a set of URLs and that's it. It runs visual tests for you. You can run them on a schedule. You can run them every 1 hour, 2 hours, every day. Uh, it can test between your staging environment or your production environment, and again, there's no code involved. You can even draw, just put a link of your sitemap XML inside Visual Scanner. It will just go through your entire website. So it's great for websites like say CMSs, like WordPress sites, things like that. Anything managed by a CMS is a great fit for Visual Scanner. Yep. I think we've reached the end side. So we can start the Q&A section of the session right now. Using Figma to validate the design manually. Okay, I think that's someone saying that they use Figma right now. But I do want to call out that Percy does, and this was a very recent addition. Say maybe it's 2 to 3 months old. We do have an integration with Figma now. So say you actually have to validate a Figma design with your actual implementation because that's part of your process. Or maybe your design team wants to get involved in visual testing. We do support that capability. So you can actually map a Figma design for visual testing, and it will test your every time you run a build, it will test it against your Figma designs to make sure that it's right. So that's actually possible right now. Uh, what if content on the page is more dynamic? For example, research based on analytics or some user sports had dynamic. Yes, review agent. I'm not sure if you missed the demo of review agent. Review agent actually handles that out of the box. So if you switch on review agent, which is literally one click, it will work. It will filter out all dynamic data changes. It already does that out of the box. There's no configuration needed. We leverage, just if you want to understand how it works, we leverage newer Gen AI technologies. We actually go into the image, understand the intent of the page, intelligently figure out what is dynamic data and what should be ignored. And we actually handle that out of the box. So all your FAQ sliders, your analytics, it's already handled. And it's a very common case. We see customers coming in with this very often.
Yeah.
Right.
There was one more question about no-code solution for regression UI testing. I think it's similar to what you answered about the visual scanner, which just works by putting in the URL as an input.
Yeah, you can just go back to that slide in case whoever's. Oh, I think this is an earlier message.
Yeah, this was an older one.
That's fine. But yeah, like you said, visual scanners are no code way of doing it. You just drop in your sitemap XML or you paste a set of URLs. That's it, and you configure a scheduler for when it has to run. That's it. No code way. I have a BrowserStack interface selling a browser, but I have okay. I'll just read out the question. I have a BrowserStack account and which is integrated with Selenium UI run and all my US tests run captured in BrowserStack. There might be some set. Okay, this seems more like a support ticket or someone having a set of support issues. So maybe you can raise this question to a support email. Maybe someone from the from the panel can answer that question and just ping in a support email so that we can help out this user.
Yeah.
C plus AI compatible for single SPS? Yes. Yeah, it is compatible, and for single page for SPA applications, it is compatible. No reason it's not. So we do support both web, just your typical websites. We do support your web applications, single page apps if you're building it in a front end framework, React, Angular, Vue, if that was the case. Yes, you can actually do that.
And
we also
with country specific content, yeah.
Oh, yes, we do handle that. So not too sure what this means, but we do, if I could just assume what it means, we do get cases where, say,
language changes.
language changes. That's actually a very frequent use case. Like, does my application look the same on, say, French, and does it look the same in English? So it's a very common request. And that's something that visual testing is a very good fit for, and it's used commonly for. We also use it, just to give you an idea. customers also use it to validate differences between right to left languages and left to right languages. So say you've got Japanese and you've got a language like English, right? So customers do make sure use Percy to test that out. And this is the specific use case that only visual testing can handle and functional testing can't handle. So yeah.
This seems to be something of the demo which we have shown on the slide.
Yeah, why is there any change in the home button? Yeah, if in case you didn't notice, so that was a very early stage build, but in that example, if I remember right, I think the home button was selected in one image and it was not selected in another image. No, it's part of the demo, so it wouldn't be
Got it.
as high. So it's selected in one image and it's not selected in another image. So that's why the change was shown there in red. Some question. In the standard Percy package, IntelliGno and AI, if you want to use IntelliGno layout testing or AI, would you note each comparison? So I'll read out the question. This is a good question. Is IntelliGno and AI already partly included in the standard Percy package? If that question is about pricing or whether it's in the free package, so right now I can tell you that Review Agent is available in all plans, free and paid plans for a limited period because we are in the beta version of Review Agent. I think I missed calling that out earlier, but it is available in all plans for a limited period. There's a possibility that we will be moving it to paid plans very soon. So do try it out if you see value in it. Do go ahead and try Review Agent out. On IntelliGno, maybe someone in the panel can answer that. I don't recall the answer right now about whether IntelliGno and layout testing are part of the standard package, free package, or whether it's restricted to paid plans. Would you, okay, the follow-up of that is if you want to use IntelliGno or layout testing or AI, would you have to note on each comparison which parts should be ignored, or can you set this once across all pages in a domain? Yeah, we do have the capability that you can set it just once. So for Review Agent, we you do it works out of the box. There's no setting required there. We do have a change coming in which you will be able to control the Review Agent's behavior, but you will have that option if you want to set it across all pages or you want to set it for a particular page. So we give that option for layout testing and layout testing as well. That if you want to set it on a specific page or on other pages, you can do it. Same for IntelliGno. So we always give you that option. At Percy, we are very well aware of the differences. So different pages look different, structures are different. The way you would want to test them are different. You can control whether you want to do it for each comparison or across all images.
There's a follow-up question. I'll take the questions for you, Keegan. I'll just read it out. And the follow-up question is that can it remember what you've already set up for future UI testing, or do you have to go through each of it to set it up? So this is more like what you've answered at you can set it up at a project level, is what I understand.
Yeah, you can do that. And also on every build run, if just in case the question was on every build run, you have to set it up just once and it will work on every single build. Like I said, Percy is all about improving productivity. So it wouldn't really make sense if we made you set that up on every run. So yeah, it's just one. Set it up once and that's it. I think we'll have to move a little quicker. We've got just
Yeah,
3 minutes left.
So there's one more just follow-up question quickly. Lots of our data is dynamic as well as images being dynamic. Can we also ignore data or
Yes.
this would be really useful? This I think is actually answered in terms of various capabilities of layout and
Review.
yeah.
Yeah, Review Agent and layout testing can do that out of the box.
Yeah.
Just to let you know, Review Agent will have the capability coming up in the next few weeks itself about letting you customize it so you can even go further and say that not just text, I want to ignore only numbers. I don't want to look at it changes in just numbers. So you can even control it to that extent going forward. But right now, data text it ignores out of the box. So even layout testing can handle that.
Yeah. So moving forward, there's a question about, let's say we have done 3 times execution and it has 3 screenshot runs. We need to specify which execution the current image should be compared against. So this is more like a baseline question is what I believe, Keegan.
Need to specify which execution. No, you don't. So just to explain to you in the Percy, when you're setting up Percy in the Percy SDK, you specify a snapshot name. think of it as a test case name. So every time you run Percy, if that snapshot is taken with the same name, your code is as is. You don't have to make any change. It will always be compared against the previous snapshot with that same name. So as long as you've set a name, say for example, um, login page loader state, it will, and you've called it in every run, it will always be compared against the previous execution of that. So thank you so much. Thank you for the great questions and your engagement during this session. Yep. Thanks, folks.
Thanks a lot.